it's cool watching on Spotify. I mean, I've heard of people watching it.
Where did you go to watch it?
Spotify. Yeah. Let us know when you're ready, Chris.
You do that. I didn't even know you could watch stuff on Spotify. So I'm already kind of amazed.
All right. Welcome back to the Average Pastor podcast. We're glad that you've joined us to listen in on a conversation with some pastor friends. So we got Jake Each and Jeff Dodge, and this is episode 4, guys. So welcome back, and it'll be fun. You guys have no idea what's coming. You don't know what this podcast is about. So I've got some stuff I want to talk to you guys about. Jake, you had talked about a potential name for this podcast idea you had, the pastoral ministry stories. You remember that one?
No, what was that?
Yeah, well, it was your idea.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you're playing ignorant because you don't want to take credit for this. It was the monthly podcast called Pastoral Ministry Stories. Oh. It's a once a month podcast with a,
Yeah.
You remember that?
Now I remember it. Yeah.
So PMS.
PMS monthly podcast, Pastoral Ministry Stories. I thought Mark would cry somewhere in the middle.
So we didn't go with that title.
No, we didn't. In fact, I came in and sat down. What are we talking about today? And you're like, well, let's just get started.
Yeah, I was over in the green room preparing before this, 5 minutes before, figuring out what we were talking about.
And we thought you were getting your makeup on.
Yeah. So let's. Some things happened since the last time we talked. So it's been a minute. Just want to, just catch up on what's been going on in your world. Jeff, you just got back from Zambia and want to hear about that. I took a little trip out west to California. We had a parenting conference. Just want to hit on some things, news and events. There was also an election.
Throw that in there.
That happened while we were away. But I just want to get caught up a little bit on what's been going on in your worlds. And start with Jeff on, Zambia. Mm-hmm. I want to you shared a little bit, but man, how was this trip?
Yeah, it was from a personal standpoint, from my inner soul, probably one of the more difficult ones. I think it was trip 22 to Zambia for me. But everything seemed to be falling apart from the minute we landed. The 6 totes of materials that we had gathered, both for the pastor training, but even more for the doctors and nurses that I had along for them to use, especially in this rural clinic that we were going to. And 3 got confiscated, 3 got left in Johannesburg airport, and so we were 0 for 6 and it took all week, actually. So I was teaching the pastors with no materials, nothing to give them. It all finally came together. I actually sent our team of doctors and nurses out to Kabansa Village and Clinic with 1 of the 6 totes. And so spent most of my first week teaching 1 Corinthians to pastors and on the phone trying to chase down 6 totes and how can we get them and why are they confiscated and are they going to try to bribe us and la, 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 la. So for me, I felt like God was wrestling my need for control. I don't know if it's that as much as my pride. I want to go deeper, just my pride of I'm a problem solver. I can get to Zambia, and when I hit these obstacles, I know how to work it. I know how to get what I need to get done. And nothing was working for me. Nothing. All my contacts, all of my schmoozing, whatever I was putting at it. Force, at one point I had a guard at the gate of the customs office. Literally, she had her 2 hands on my chest, pushing me back because I was so insistent on getting in. Anyway.
Your charm was overwhelming.
Yeah, I was just overwhelming her with my charm at that point. So God was good in that everything did finally come through, and I learned a ton. And then the bigger thing was I had this moment where I was saying, this is very fleshly. Fine, Zambia, if you don't want our help, I'm out of here. And I had this, it wasn't an audible voice, but this very clear, distinct thing of Jesus saying, I didn't give up on you. And it was like a game changer for me. It was a pivotal moment for me. And
what do you think about our brothers and sisters there?
Right.
They live in, that's the world
their
they
life.
live in. Of
That's normal.
corruption and just helplessness, injustice.
And just inefficiency. Even when there's not bad motives, it's just inefficiency. And nothing comes easy ever for them. And that was the other thing that it did is I need to enter into my brothers and sisters' lives all the more and realize this is their daily experience. This is life for them. And so while I'm wild-eyed trying to, stomp my American fist and say unfair, unfair, Miriam, on the other hand, is at that airport for 2 days, almost nonstop, just waiting, just seeing, praying, sending me prayers through WhatsApp. So what I learned
Imagine
again,
that, waiting and praying.
Is there?
and they're looking to me for leadership. Right. This is what's
and that's inefficiency.
I know, okay? I didn't need to come on a podcast where you guys just dogpile. No, truly, I thank God. I do. I thank God for what he teaches me every single time. I think people assume that maybe I go to Zambia for what I'm contributing and what I'm doing to help. And selfishly, I am shaped and changed and made more like Christ, I feel like, every trip.
So you got to go to Kabansa and see baby Jeff.
Yeah, so dude, you're already immediately the tears start coming because got to see baby Jeff. He's the first baby that was born in Kabansa, and they named him Jeff.
Isn't it?
Well, actually, this one's a boy. Yeah, Marlon's is a girl, but
okay,
that's a whole nother. Anyway, so the first little baby born in Kabansa Village has to go through life now named Jeff. Like about the only kid in Zambia named Jeff. So they came to greet me, to let me see Jeff. He was born, several months ago now. And I see that they're carrying this chicken. This will sound absurd maybe, but they're carrying this chicken and I'm like, oh, whatever. Well, after we chat through an interpreter, the dad goes to hand me this live, chicken. And I realize in that moment, they're giving me this gift. Well, you have to understand at this point, the poverty level and because of the drought, the malnutrition, the just absence of any kind of food is so severe there that one of the ladies has even died because they're going out and trying to dig up edible roots in the woods, and she dug up some poisonous roots. And so that's how hungry they are. They're digging in the ground to find roots to boil and eat. And they're giving me this chicken, which so now I'm standing there realizing that they're willing to give me, it'd be, I think, maybe of greater value than the widow's 2 mites, And so I am immediately ready to fall apart in tears, but they're just with joy, beaming joy, ready to give me the best thing that they have and the most valuable thing, their treasure. And so, of course, I take it, but I am like trying to keep my smile and cheerfulness and gratitude going. And I'll never forget that moment for the rest of my life. The level of their joy upon giving me, it wasn't like tears running down their faces at giving me their last treasured, chicken. They were filled with joy at being able to honor me and give me something, and so
was the roof on church? I think
it was, the walls gleaming, glistening. It was an amazing to see the forward progress on the church building. And
so to those who are listening and don't know what Kabansa is, but it's a super remote village in Zambia. And it's a kind of a long, arduous journey to get there it hasn't gotten any better. No, yeah. And so there's a medical clinic there and a church there that was planted here recently. So but how humbling to have a malnourished, starving family bring you a chicken to thank you. And so
very humbling. Yeah. And the reason we were going this time was this medical team, and they did phenomenal everywhere they went. They're working with their Zambian colleagues, marveling at what those Zambians bring to the table and their just their brilliance, their innovativeness, ingenuity, because they just lack resources, but their skill level is so sharp and good, and knowledge and stuff. So they come back and they're laughing together and enjoying. I mean, it was just, our medical team was phenomenal. So huge.
Wow.
Hats off to them.
Jake, do you ever think about Zambia? I mean, we were just there in July, but it's easy kind of, you have these experiences and you think, I'll never forget this, and this changes my life. And sometimes it can be out of sight, out of mind. But do you ever think about Zambia?
Often.
Reflect?
Yeah.
Really?
Often. Yeah. It was a really impactful trip. It was just the people were amazing, the experience. I would say it is a frequent reminder in my mind, just the work there, the people there, and like Jeff said, the impact it has on you personally.
Jeff, how do you want people to, we're talking about Zambia and this just experience that you have, and sometimes we listen, we don't know what to do with it,
right.
Or should we feel, I know you don't want us to feel guilty, but like you want us to enter into, I mean, we want to, because we've been there, but just people that, and you come back and share with the church and, people want to help, they want to do something.
Right.
And what do you think is a good response to hearing this?
Yeah, for sure. I don't want to make people feel guilty because they're not suffering the way that the Zambians are, or we have so much compared to them, because the Zambians don't think that way, but they know that there's a big chasm between our lifestyle and their lifestyle, and they don't hold it against us or whatever. So no guilt at all. I think it's a miraculous thing if God should lead people to contribute, but that's not the only place in need. I mean, we just covered 1 Timothy 5 about widows and orphans that are all around us and how we care for the people in our own household. And so I'm just saying there's all sorts of ways that God can use you to be charitable, to give and that. So if God should very specifically lead you to give toward the work in Zambia, fantastic. But I don't hold that on anybody, because I realize God has multiple people in multiple places, and we need to be responsive to His Spirit. But if it does at least increase that impulse or sensitivity to that impulse to give to others, amen. We should. That example, actually not of my sacrifice, but of maybe Jeff's dad. Like if he could lead the rest of us to be more generous with a big joyful, happy face,
Totally.
Yes, do that. Don't do it out of guilt. Do it out of the joy that guy had in giving me that chicken,
Yeah. There was a cool insight that came up in our staff meeting here recently about something you said at the parenting conference. This is the connection point for me from Zambia to this is we taught on 1 Timothy 5, and it's every once in a while, God's word you can tell it strikes a nerve with God's people. And I've had a lot of conversations about this passage on caring for widows. And Paul talks about this list of widows that, hey, don't just put any widow on the list. Like they've got to be godly women and have this reputation, and they're giving back and serving and prayer and all these things. And I was thinking about, man, I wonder if our list is the widows in Zambia. We've got so many people in Zambia that, and maybe, but Jake, this came up in our staff meeting. We were talking about something you shared about Jesus saying, you are the light of the hill, or you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. And you said something about how is it Matthew 5? The light shines in the house and
all in the house to see.
Yeah. What was it? Right there. Matthew 5:15. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket, but rather on a lampstand, and it gives light for all who are in the house. And Rebecca shared this in staff meeting, and I had the amen to this. I had never, how many times have I read that and seen that, but never made this connection that the light is in the house. She was talking about dropping her kids off at school and saying, okay, now go shine the light of Christ. And it's almost like it could be the opposite. Like they come home and like they're getting off the bus, walking in, like, okay, now shine the light of Christ in the house. We were talking about that related to taking care of family. how'd you find that? What I mean, like, did you? Is that something?
It's in Matthew.
How come I couldn't see it? And, you just read that, but we think about it as evangelism, where you just like.
Well, I mean, when preparing for a parenting conference, there was a few passages that I was reading through, and that Psalm 127 about, unless the Lord builds the house, the laborers labor in vain. And then further down in that psalm, it's talking about how children are an heritage or a blessing from the Lord. And then reading that passage, just kind of seeing how house is used as an illustration. But when it's like it shines in the house, it's like, well, who's in the house? It's like your kids. So it's like, is our light shining to the people that are around us? In our own homes was kind of the
dude. That was so good, Jeff.
That's beautiful.
You missed a great parenting. You got to.
I know.
Okay, you got to go back and listen to Jake's sermons. I have heard this from other people, so this is what I thought. But someone said this to me yesterday. It was the best, like, sermons that they've heard on parenting, and I don't think they're just speaking in hyperbole. It was so good to have you come in and just on the first night laying the groundwork in that first talk, but then getting practical and boots on the ground with the stuff we deal with as parents. But if you're listening, I think that's posted online somewhere, probably on our podcast feed. You can listen to those, but I would commend those to you. But
when anybody, as preachers, when anybody says it's posted online, do you always have that like gut reaction, like, oh man, what did I say? It's now in the World Wide Web for everybody to hear.
Well, Jake, you did preach last year at our marriage conference.
Well, I think that got edited.
Yeah, we actually had to edit some things that you said. So
we just need to stop recording things.
We're
recording things.
I'll never do that again.
Jake, what were your thoughts on the parenting conference? I mean, you have any, just kind of thoughts on that or things that stuck out to you as you were preparing, on that?
I mean, it was super humbling and a joy to speak on parenting, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, who am I to, we're still in it. I mean, our youngest is in 8th grade, and we have kids in college, but it really made you depend on, like, okay, I'm no expert, but I have the Word of God, and how do we help give the wisdom from the Word applied into this privilege of raising kids? So just the preparation was just so rewarding, because you go into it not like, oh, what have we done that's worked? It's like, what is God's Word telling us that maybe we need to improve upon ourselves as parents and stuff. So that was a joy.
You gotta, I don't know if you'll be able to find it on your phone, but your little thing that your little explanation of where Johnny came from her first grade class or something. I don't know if you can find that.
You want me to read that?
Yeah, I want you to read that. It was because here's what I was thinking about. You are qualified to speak on this, you and Marcy, because your kids are awesome. I mean, Johnny's involved in Salt Company.
Just ask them; they'll tell you.
Well, this reminded me of. I want you to read it, and I'll tell a story, but set this one up and have context for this.
All right. Johnny was in 1st grade, and the assignment given to parents was you have to write something nice about your kids, put it in a sealed envelope, and then they'll open it and read it in front of the class. So it's the first time she's seen what I wrote is when she opens it.
This 1st grade?
1st grade.
Okay.
I think. Somewhere. I think it was 1st grade. So I was already feeling a little bit ornery, because I was like, why are you giving me homework? Like, I'm not in 1st grade. But I thought I'd have fun with it. So it says, Dear Mrs. Osborne's class, and Johnny has to read this out loud. This is the first time she's hearing it. I'm writing to you to tell you just how special my daughter Johnny is to me. You see, most little girls are born in hospitals, but I bought Johnny from a unicorn named Harold. She cost 3 of my favorite baseball cards and a plate of her mother's famous cookies. Don't ask me why a unicorn would want baseball cards, but it was the best purchase ever. The first time I held Johnny, I better understood what it really means to love someone. I didn't feel that way so much with Mo. I just realized
I know.
this is my second child.
Second child. The first time I ever.
Yeah. It just didn't catch the first time. I just caught that. Breeding this to Mo. And how it comes out. That's my oldest, for those listening. I knew we would go on lots of adventures together. All good adventures need companions, if you ask me. And Johnny is the type of companion who can make a great day out of an ordinary day. She can make you laugh when you don't feel like it. She always gives hugs at just the right time. She has grown into a beautiful girl. And boys, I'm not just talking about her looks. I'm talking about her heart. She loves God and cares for other people. She has grown so beautiful that Harold the Unicorn wanted to buy her back, and he would not stop until he had her. So I shot Harold, and we had Unicorn for dinner.
The end.
The end. That's it.
I wonder what her face was like as she gets to that last line and has to read it out loud.
Yeah.
Well, what made me think of is, Johnny is a first grader standing up reading that.
Yeah.
But now here she is. What is she? 19, sophomore in college. And she's standing alone, I'm sure reading her essays now that are glorifying Christ. And she's standing alone in her faith, going against the current at the university. Yeah. And I just admire that. And I think that is the apple hasn't fallen far from the apple tree.
Yeah, thanks. We take a joy in our kids in that. It was an honor to be invited. Hopefully it was helpful. I know it was helpful for me in prepping it. So
no, it's very, very cool. So
even her desire for writing. I mean, Jake, you're a great writer, and here she is, at the university writing and doing a phenomenal job, and writing outside of just her classwork, just for the church and for her own pleasure. But yeah, that's a gift, I think, that you gave her. So well done.
I'll take credit for that one.
Yeah, Marcy's genetics didn't have anything to do with the artistic creativity.
I think it's proven that comes through the father.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, physiologically.
I'm sure.
Not a doubt in my mind.
I'm sure that's there. Let's see what else happened while we were gone. We took a trip with some Veritas people out to California. Yeah.
We're at in California.
Yeah. So we, my sister and brother-in-law live in Ventura. So we were down, and it's about an hour north of LA. It's a pretty cool area because it's kind of walled in by mountains. You've got kind of the LA chaos, and then there's this kind of some mountains, and then Ventura's kind of down along the coast, and it's got kind of a sleepy seaside.
Whenever
vibe.
I hear Ventura, I just think, isn't that a lyric in Tom Petty, Free Fallin'?
Ventura Boulevard. Yeah.
Different place.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, Ventura Boulevard's down in the San Fernando Valley, but it might go all the way out there. I can't remember.
One of my claims to fame is in skateboarding is I skated with the guy in that music video.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, the Free Fallin' video back when we had
music videos,
MTV. Yep. So I'm pretty insignificantly famous because of that. I'm a big deal.
You're a big deal.
In the skateboarding music video world. I mean.
Yeah. But that guy's not even a big deal. So I don't know what that makes me. But so anyway, Ventura, it feels like Iowa City on the coast. Actually, I would say this. It could feel like if going up 380, if it was the Pacific Ocean and a coastline between here and Cedar Rapids, that would be the drive between Ventura and Santa Barbara. Okay. So you go Ventura, and then it goes like Santa Barbara is up in there. So like Montecito, Santa Barbara, and then UC Santa Barbara is tucked in this Isla Vista is the name of the town. But it's all kind of in that Santa Barbara area. Yeah.
So even though this is a place people might vacation, this wasn't a vacation for you. What was going on?
Yeah. So we went with a team to just look at opportunities to plant a church out there. And one of our emerging great young leaders, pastors, Ryan Hamby, is just at that point of transition with, he's led Salt Company now. I think this is his 6th year. And we'll have to pull him on sometime and just,
for sure.
Talk more about it. But being with him, we took a couple elders Dave Hicks, Mitch Larson. We took, Olivia Ginther, our coordinator here, co-leads with Ryan, Salt Company here, and then Ryan and his wife Ellie. Nice. It was a blast. I mean, I feel like we just stepped into a work that God is doing. And I just, Isaiah 25:1 was a theme verse for me in coming to Iowa City. And it just says, "Oh Lord, you are my God. I will exalt and praise your name. For in perfect faithfulness, you have done marvelous things planned long ago." And I can share some of the stories, but here's a question. Here's something that happened on the last day. We were hanging out. My sister and brother-in-law lived there, and it was crazy because every morning I get up and try to watch the sunrise over the hills because it's just such a epic, beautiful place, and I walk out on Wednesday morning, and the Santa Ana winds are blowing out off the desert and toward the ocean, so it's blowing all this sand. I felt like I was in a sandstorm, just fierce winds, like not quite derecho, but kind of. And wildfires broke out. We almost had to evacuate her house. It was like a few blocks away from evacuation. But they had the next day off of school. And so we were leaving Thursday morning. And we just had a time together, sitting in their living room to debrief our trip. And, my brother-in-law asked this question. He said, "How do you know if God's calling you to plant a church?" Now, he's saying that as an ally, like they're all in. They're super excited for what God's doing, and there's some open doors there. But just that question, I want to ask you guys, and because it relates to how do we as a church know God is calling us to do something, but also it goes down to at an individual level, a lot of people processing God's will for their lives. Like, well, how do you know it's God's will, or how do you know it's God's calling you to do anything? Mm-hmm. What would you guys say to that? How do you know if God is calling you to do something, and individually or corporately?
Yeah, having this conversation frequently with young guys looking to go into ministry, and how do you know if we're called? Which I don't think we talk about calling enough. Right. But I to look at three things. Internal desire, external affirmation, and opportunity. And when all three of those things line up, I would interpret that as calling. Like, if you have an internal desire that comes from somewhere, like I want to go into ministry, or I want to plant a church, and then you have external affirmation, like people around you saying, "I think you should. I see these gifts in you." So those two things together are great. But then when there's opportunity, when someone's like, "Hey, I would like to offer you a job in ministry," or when those three things are together, I would say, yeah, I think that lines up to calling. And if one of them's missing, like, you could have people telling you would be a great pastor, I'll give you a job. So you got external affirmation and opportunity. But if you don't have an inward desire, it's not going to work. Or you can have an inward desire, like, I really want to do this, but nobody around you is like telling you should. So I think all three of those are really important.
Could that apply to dating or something too? Like internal calling, like, I would really like to date you. External affirmation.
She would also like to date you. Opportunity, you have money to go on a date. When those things line up.
So give me, in your lives, if you take those three things, give an example of where those things lined up for you. Or maybe early on in ministry. Like,
yeah. I think early on in ministry, I had a desire. I don't know if I had a lot of external affirmation. I think
you just kept going anyway.
Well, no, I didn't. I went to play ball and go.
But just real quick. So let's go back to high school Jake real quick.
Yeah.
So you get recruited from Muscatine, Iowa, to go play football at Arizona State, right? Which is that's a pretty big deal. I don't know how many people are getting that. So that's pretty cool. But you're down at Arizona State, and you just quit the team and moved to Chicago. What happened?
Well, there was a lot so I played 2 seasons got involved with FCA and local church ministry, and just internal desire increased. And after 2 seasons of playing, wanted to just I wanted to do ministry more than I wanted to play football. Went and had a conversation with my coach. I waited to after the holiday break because we were playing in the Aloha Bowl. I was like, let's do that first.
That'd be a good idea.
This conversation can wait. And I don't. How much do you want me to go into that story? Just said thanks for 2 great seasons. I love playing for you. And this is what I'm going to do. He had never had that conversation with a player before. I think he thought I was going to be a priest or something. He wasn't too happy. He took my scholarship from me. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Oh, wow.
So I dropped out of school. I wanted to stay in the Valley. There was a Christian school in the Valley, and I really loved the Valley there.
Wow.
So I'm looking for a job. I don't have a loot check anymore. I'm not advocating this is the way to do it. I'm just telling you this is how it unfolded for me. I didn't want that to be our last conversation. So like a week or so later, I went back in the football office and just told him, like, I loved playing for you. Thanks for everything you've done for me. Just wanted him to better understand, like, I'm not running mad. Like, this is what I feel I'm supposed to do. He made one phone call, got me back into school for the rest of the semester, gave me my scholarship back for the rest of the semester,
Nice.
gave me a job in the football office. Just God's favor and grace in that time. And then like a month after that, a friend took me to a church where Dr. Stoll was speaking. He was the president of Moody Bible Institute. And afterwards introduced me, told him my story, and the next month I was accepted at Moody. So that was just kind of unfolded quickly and was pretty cool.
Wow. Did affirmation, though, you had that internal calling?
Yeah, I had a strong growing affirmation. But what in ministry? And it was kind of, we applaud your desire. We'll see. I didn't have a lot of context to express ministry gifts. I showed leadership gifts, and I, was pursuing that. It was in college. I was taking a homiletics class, a preaching class, where we all have to give a sermon, and then you get ripped apart by everybody. And I had no aspiration or desires to be a preacher. I was like, I just want to be a ministry, whatever that means. I'm an athlete. I love Jesus. I play kickball with kids. It'd be great. And my professor afterwards said, I think you have the gift of preaching. That was the first time. And I'm talking about it, 25, 20, whatever years later. That had a big impact on the first time I thought, like, oh, maybe this is what's for me.
You've shared this, I think, with students going through Veritas School of Theology on their preaching, but what he shared with you, what some people that want to teach the Bible, some people that want to teach people the Bible, or what's your
about I'm lost.
I know there was epic things that you said.
Epic ones that really stuck with you.
Well, you said something about, you were talking to one of the students in VST that just kind of preached a good raw sermon, and you said to him, "Well, that's." Am I in your memory?
I think some people just get really passionate about teaching the Bible, and they missed a passion for teaching people the Bible. And you're not just up there teaching. You have to love the word and love the people you're teaching it to.
Right.
And it's not about sounding smart, but clearly communicating. And yeah, he was a great professor.
But I think that's a contribution that you have of not trying too hard to be sophisticated and smart. You are. You don't give yourself enough credit.
I've told you guys this before, early on in preaching, where you're trying to just use words that are too big for you. I was in Manchester, and I wanted to say that God is omnipotent, and I said that God was impotent. And I just knew by the looks on the face, I didn't say something right. And it's just like, oh, do I keep talking? What do I do here?
As it turns out, exactly the opposite of the word that you were trying to pronounce.
Jeff, what would you like somebody trying to assess calling and is this what God wants?
Well, I just appreciate the way you framed it, because I think when we hear calling, immediately you can think about the call of Abraham, like out of nowhere, this voice from heaven, or the call of Saul that became the Apostle Paul, he has this voice from heaven, all that. And so calling maybe has that audible, supernatural thing. And it actually rarely works out that way. Those are, even within the Bible, you can count on one hand the times that is what a call to ministry is, Instead, it's faithfulness. It's looking for the means of grace that come through other people's affirmation and the internal, everything you just said. That said, every now and then God does do something supernatural to get your attention. And I think that those things have to be laid over the top of those natural means of grace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that if there's a place that he wants to direct you to that hasn't come to your attention, or if you're filled with fear about going somewhere, that would have been mine over the years, where God had to supernaturally overcome the fears of what I felt like I was supposed to, when it was time to go to California, to go to seminary, those kind of things. And it's my fear holding me back. And God would supernaturally drop these either, different ways that he would do that. And so I'm just saying there's also there is that supernatural thing, but don't wait for that voice from heaven or whatever to be that calling. Actually listen to the voices around you, to the internal voice that you have, you know what I mean? And
well, what gave you the courage to load up your family and head out west to California for seminary? I mean, one of the things was I just began to pray about it. And all of a sudden this friend of mine that I had from a couple of years back in Des Moines, we loaded boxes together at UPS, and called me out of the blue and said, I don't even know if you're thinking about going to seminary, but if you did, I think you should go to the master's seminary. And if you'd be willing to think about that, I'd love to pay to take you and Teresa out there to see it. And I was like, I'm looking around like, were you just in the other room with me when I was praying? I mean, it was that
wow
sequence, where I'm praying, and out of the blue, he calls me again from a guy a couple of years ago that we were in life together. So just some different things like that started encouraging me. I needed those supernatural boosts, like, I've got you. So use the natural just means of grace, but then also wait for God to drop those little miraculous moments where he catches your attention and maybe puts another breadcrumb on the path to just take that next step,
Yep. So what about corporately as pastors? How do you know where God's calling you, directionally as a church? I mean, you guys just, renovated your building, and that was a big, step of faith for your church financially, and getting after that. We're, adding on to our facility here with the new auditorium things, taking an offering and that type of thing. How do you process it more at a corporate level?
Yeah, I think the same principles apply. Like, okay, there's internal I think we need to do this. It aligns with Scripture, our calling. We're feeling compelled by this. And then external affirmation would be, is there synergy around this with leadership? Are we collectively feeling this? And then is there opportunity? Like, is it feasible? Can we do it?
Right.
Is it realistic? And has God provided and opened doors for us to do that? So I think the same three things would apply.
Yep. Well, I was thinking about Jesus' words, and when he sends out the disciples, and he's like, "Hey, look for a place of peace, a person of peace. If they open their home, stay with them." And there's some of those things I thought about on our trip out west, and the people that hosted us, and the work that God had done. I mean, more stories can be told as we get further down the road. And we, as an elder team, I mean, even here recently, just talking together and processing it. And I think we're in that stage, Jake, of is there external affirmation? Is there, is God in this? And I think it's this is the thing that I love about being a part of Veritas is the river is moving. It's not a swamp. It's not and I love that, just that, to keep the current of the river moving with faith and not getting stagnant with,
for sure.
Just operating out of what you can control. But I just feel like, God is the river's moving, God's at
And his
work.
blessing, that the affirmation doesn't always come with success. That when you read through Hebrews 11, in fact, the whole point of Hebrews 11 is all these people were seeking him by faith. Hebrews 11:6 kind of starts the whole thing. God rewards those who seek him, not those who achieve it. Because then he goes on to tell the stories, none of whom saw the full completion of that which they were seeking to accomplish.
Yeah.
None of them. And he's saying that that's the great cloud of witnesses. Then we get to Hebrews 12 is follow that path. Not that you're going to sense that you're hitting the finish line. You're going to see the checkered flag. You're going to,
So success is not the proof
right.
that you were called.
Right.
Like 'cause some people are called to things and they get all those, your checklist of 3 things and they go do what God has called them to do. And it looks like it failed. I think about Isaiah when after he has this vision of God and holy, 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 so the doorposts of, the threshold at the temple is shaking and the voice of God. And he's like, who will I send? Here am I, Lord, send me. And he's like, all right, here's what you're going to do. Here's the game plan. You're going to go and you're going to preach. Nobody's going to listen.
They're not going to listen to you.
Well, how long, Lord? How long? Well, until the whole tree's come down, cut down. It's just the stump.
Yeah.
That's how long, but out of that stump, like you're going to preach and the crowds are going to leave. No one's going to listen. And it's going to go on for a long time until it's just a stump. But out of that stump will come a holy seed. I think that's a great perspective, Jeff, on Hebrews 11 that, success isn't always the proof that and the validation of a calling either. Call to faithfulness. And I was thinking about where, Jake, going back to your story, I look at you as a preacher and I think, man, who wouldn't want to preach like that? Like that's awesome. But there were years in small town Iowa, laboring. And, I just think that faithfulness over time is something that God has used in your life. And, I want that I would say, similarly to me, you've got stories of early ministry years too, but I think that would be a motif in this podcast, a recurring theme that I think should almost come up every time is just a call to faithfulness, even when it's not amazing and glorious, glamorous. And some of the things we've been talking about, whether it's in Zambia in an airport terminal, getting totes confiscated, or whether it's, you're talking about parenting, just serving in the home, or just being faithful in a ministry that's not amazing, so I think that's where a lot of good fruit comes
ultimately, the twist that he takes us on in Hebrews 12 is, hey, look at that great cloud of witnesses, this just litany, this whole list of people. And then he says, oh, but keep your focus on Jesus because he actually endured the cross. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying the champion of our faith is actually one who also plodded through and groaned through great suffering and persevering. And we don't do well, especially American Christians don't do well with persevering faith. We want to quickly get through that because, this is just a temporary thing in order to let us fly again. And
you want to be efficient.
Yeah.
You don't want to just sit in an airport and wait and pray. Like, let's get things going. We got things to do. And
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
You talked about God putting his finger on your forehead.
I felt like forever, instead of Jacob having a limp, I was going to have a dent in my forehead. I told the team there because I felt like God had his finger on my head holding me back as I'm doing the haymaker. I'm just swinging, just doing everything I could, exhausting myself trying to get this done. And God's got his finger here. He's going, are we done yet? We're not? We're not? Okay. And God's just going to sit there just with his little finger on my head. But it felt strangely loving, the Father was going, I can wait you out. In fact, it looks like that's the way we're going to play this out, aren't we, right now? Okay, I've got time. I got nothing but time, Jeff.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of wind this down a little bit, but here's the kind of last question. One of the things that happened since we talked last was the election. So
we're going to end real quick.
Yeah, we're just going to end real quick on that. So, okay, is seriousness. Like I think, there's some people that are, excited. Some people are grieving. You got a kind of mix of what, people are thinking post-election. I don't know that a lot of people saw coming what happened, but just kind of your own thoughts, and maybe even kind of pastorally, as people listen, and just a word of encouragement would be in a way to process that through a Godward lens.
I feel like I got to yield to my elder.
Well, I mean, we have a new president-elect. I've tried to make it my practice over the years of, Romans 13, who's ever in power, address them appropriately. President Biden, President Trump, right? So it's ours to receive the leader that God has put in place. And so immediately I'd say the little bit of Bible that we have to inform the political, nature of what we've got going on. Let's at least start there. And that is, we're going to show respect, show honor to the leader. And so whether you're happy, elated about this, or devastated by this, or somewhere in between, that's our president. And we're going to show honor, and we're going to submit, and we're going to carry on the work of the church and pray for him. First Timothy, we're going to pray for that president and so forth. But I think also it's just our time as Christians, as churches. So can we get back to being the church? I'd like to think that our churches stayed, pretty much focused on that North Star, the gospel, the Great Commission, and being the church. But I know there are a lot of churches that this became, people, the ship began to tilt a little bit because this election was taking on undue weight. And so, okay, that's in the rear view. Let's get back to being the church, and let's take a big, deep breath. And okay, Jesus, you haven't moved. You're still on the throne, and let's move forward by faith. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, the wins. No more political commercials. So that's
right?
fun. We can get back to cologne commercials that seem like pornography, but I don't know. That's a win. I think it's a good reminder that good government can't save us and bad government can't destroy us.
Yeah.
It's, what comes after Election Tuesday? Wednesday. Just let's be faithful. Let's continue to preach the gospel boldly, passionately, live for Christ in whatever context Christ has for us, whether that's a thriving America or a struggling America. Christ be preached. And so I would just caution people that are overexcited or devastated. Like, we don't put our hope in government. Be engaged, be active. Those issues matter. I don't mean to say that they don't, but let's continue to keep the first thing first, and that's the gospel.
Yep. It was good being in Africa through this, because...
you were there during the...
Yeah. So, I haven't even been in the country for 36 hours yet, I don't think. So, and I had some... No, longer than that. I'm a bad counter. Anyway, I haven't been back very long. So, I had some Africans like, oh, so you have a new president. I'm like, yes, I do. Because it was so inconsequential compared to the work that was going on right in front of me. You know what I mean? And so that actually is probably a better way to live our lives, But God took me to a different hemisphere through all that, But really, I didn't check my phone constantly to see what was going on. Because that work was more important. Well, that's true here too, church. Yeah. Let's get after the ministry God's put before us, and that's going to happen. And we should pay attention, but not be fixed to it. So,
yep, it's a good word.
What about you? You haven't answered yet.
Oh, Yeah, I think that the things we said before, we did a whole podcast on it, on, politics and thinking through that. And I think we believe the things that we said, which was, and so I think going into it, I was like, God is sovereign, God be praised. We prayed about it. Yeah. We just know that we'll wake up the next day and God's will have been done. And I'm at peace with that, whatever it is. And so, I woke up and like, okay, this is the, for just what we said is, to stay focused on the mission. And when you're trusting God, I like whatever you just said, not to put, I don't know, you had a creative way of saying
government.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's true. So I'm excited, mostly excited for the election to be done and just
to move forward. And I think as Christians, Francis Schaeffer wrote, I don't know if it's a book or a chapter in a book, like The Lord's Work in the Lord's Way. Yeah. Like that are championing like, we're going to get, whatever Christian principles applied or however we see it. For the church to remember, it's not just what we do, but how we do it matters. And for the church to go about the Lord's work in a way that reflects the Lord's character. We have a chance to exemplify that.
There was something about that last podcast. You said something, I think that we were kind of done recording, and you're like, man, I wonder if we just needed to be a little more bold, just come out and say, or I wonder if people will listen to this and say, yeah, but you were too ambiguous. You just come out and say it. Somebody come out and say the hard thing. And I was pretty frustrated by this. I was hearing about this, some influencer, some Christian influencer that's like, kind of her platform was like, I'm going to say the things your pastor doesn't have the courage to say. And then I hear the stuff that they say. And it's like this ultra political, pretty divisive hot take. And I'm like, it's not a courage issue, right? It's a discernment and wisdom issue.
I'm not going to say the things your influencer doesn't have the wisdom not to say. Podcast is over.
So that's a reflection for me on, I think those people are going to have a ton of followers, and it seems courageous. It seems like I'm being bold, and your pastor doesn't have the courage. And I was so put out by that. And just like that, please, that's not helpful. Yeah. And I know that's how you get a good following. But I think, I just think it just lacks so much. I'm like, that'd be hard to hear if I was going to a church and you were my pastor and I'm hearing you say that in that tone and in that, I just think it's unhelpful and divisive. But
I had somebody say that to me as well. Like, why doesn't Veritas just say, and he fill in that blank. And I was like, because I don't believe that. That's why I'm not saying it. It's not because I'm holding back out of fear, out of intimidation. I don't believe what you just said. Therefore, I'm not going to have that come out of my mouth.
Right. Totally.
You know what I mean? Like
totally. Yeah. So anyway, hey, we're gonna end this episode. But I was thinking we gotta be thinking about this. What's like our line that we say at the end? Our sign off. What's a good? It's kind of like what's an average pastor podcast sign off line? Maybe you can be thinking about that next time.
Let's have it for next time. I'm not going to be able to come up with one on the fly.
We need to come up with a new one each time.
Each time. Okay, so Jake, you sign us off this time.
For our tagline, what's
today's sign off?
Yeah, just.
Oh, you put me on the spot.
Okay, all right.
No. I'm on the spot.
You're on the spot.
You can't bail me out. It's going to be dumb or something, but I got to say
this is what it is. This will be the last thing that's said on here, and we'll see you next week. So go ahead.
So give me an example of like a sign off for somebody that maybe not listens to podcasts.
This sign off is like the longest running sign off a podcast has ever.
Give me an example of a sign off.
See you next week. That would be.
I feel like I listen to Kevin DeYoung's, and it's something about, I don't know, glorify God, read a good book. Yeah. We'll see.
Okay, at the length of this discussion of sign-offs, here's the sign-off for this one. For the one person still listening, thank you.
Amen.
Amen. All right, we'll see you next time.